You are watching the sea trial of a new ship. For the first time, she is being put to the test. Many tests. Zigzag turns and spiral steering. Maximum power, full speed ahead. A sudden reverse to full speed astern. But the sea trial of this new vessel tests more than routine handling. For this is a very special ship. The first one of her kind. The only one of her kind today. What makes her different? Perhaps you've noticed one clue. No smokestack. A ship without a smokestack. How can this be? What does she burn? What makes her go? The answer to these questions, the reason for this ship's unique value, lies behind this insignia. Beyond this symbol, released from within a special furnace called a nuclear reactor, lies the enormous energy of the tiny atom. Energy which can propel her 14 times around the world on a single fuel loading. Energy which is silently, safely, and instantly controlled through the flick of a switch, the turn of a knob. Yes, this ship is truly different. For this is the world's first atomic-powered merchantman. This is the nuclear ship Savannah. The first cargo passenger ship to be powered by nuclear energy, the NS Savannah, is a true pioneer. For she brings to the seafaring world new flexibility and freedom. But this modern pioneer had her counterpart in history. A brave but tiny vessel which she honors in carrying this golden model and in bearing her name, Savannah. This was the SS Savannah, first to cross the ocean using steam. When Captain Moses Rogers sailed this ship from her home port of Savannah, Georgia on May 22nd, 1819, the cheers of many were ringing in his ears. But in spite of her smartly trimmed accommodations, there were no passengers. Who would dare sail from the sight of land next to a boiler full of steam? And there was hardly any cargo. Wood and coal to feed the hungry engine took up almost every bit of space. Her 25-foot paddle wheels were retractable, withdrawn to survive the pounding of a heavy sea. Her smokestack swiveled to deflect its sparks from her sails. This was the first Savannah, introducing a new era of power in America's conquest of the sea. Through the years, the use of steam power was to grow. Great effort and ingenuity went into the design and construction of new ways to harness and control steam. The paddle wheel gave way to the propeller. Engines grew in size and power, changed in design. The fuels, wood and coal, gave way to oil. As America's fleets changed in type and tonnage, her ships increased in size and speed. And her growing merchant marine, providing increased trade and commerce, became a vital force, improving the nation's economic life, her way of life, and her relationship to the world. Then came nuclear power. Men planned and worked toward the use of this new source of power. the tremendous heat which could be released from the splitting of the atom. Nuclear energy. Here was a fuel ideally suited to ship propulsion. A source of energy which, measured in pounds instead of tons, could send liners around the globe, deliver shiploads of cargo directly to the most distant ports. With the birth of the atomic age, this dream was to become a reality. Within an atomic furnace, the tremendous power bound up in the nucleus of an atom could be released and controlled. And certain types of reactors could be successfully placed into a ship. The first merchant ship to sail under this new and mighty power would be America's seafaring showcase of the peaceful atom. She would be the nuclear ship Savannah. Proposed by former President Eisenhower, the Savannah's construction was subsequently authorized by Congress in 1956. She was to be a prototype of nuclear merchant ships and a demonstration of the dependability and safety of atomic power at sea. Her design was of utmost importance. The most exacting standards of both the Maritime Administration and Atomic Energy Commission would have to be met. The positioning of her reactor received careful consideration. It would have to be easily accessible, yet completely isolated by its heavy shielding. All these requirements were amply met by George G. Sharp Incorporated in the design of a ship that would be as sleek and attractive as she was efficient and safe. A ship that would accommodate 60 passengers and carry 10,000 tons of cargo. Construction of the Savannah by the New York Shipbuilding Corporation began at Camden, New Jersey. The keel laying of America's first nuclear merchant ship was a significant and festive occasion. With the ship's construction underway, work also began on the manufacture of her reactor by the Babcock and Wilcox Company. The molding of the reactor head was one of the first steps. The uranium oxide, which would be the Savannah's fuel, was processed and made into pellets. Almost 700,000 of these pellets would be loaded into the reactor's core, enough potential energy to drive the ship 300,000 miles. Just how would this new source of power propel the Savannah? Basically, this is how it works. Nuclear energy in the form of great heat is generated when control rods are withdrawn from between the fuel elements. The higher the rods are raised, the greater the reactivity between the elements, and consequently, the greater the heat. The intense heat of the core is carried off by water at a temperature of about 500 degrees Fahrenheit in this pressurized system. This primary system water moves into a heat exchanger, where it transfers its heat to water of a secondary system. The secondary water boils rapidly to create great amounts of steam. The steam drives a turbine, which turns the shaft of the propeller. Cold seawater condenses the steam back to water, which is then pumped back to the heat exchanger. Around the reactor, a complex system of shielding is constructed to assure utmost safety. The shielding consists of many types of material. There are collision mats made up of alternate layers of thick steel and redwood planks. Tons of concrete are poured to form a 4-foot barrier. From the top of this barrier, workmen apply polyethylene sheets to the heavy lead on the upper half of the containment vessel. With this protection, the NS Savannah can withstand almost any conceivable collision with the world's largest merchant ships without any damage to her reactor. This makes her one of the safest ships afloat. The same care which goes into the reactor also goes into every one of the Savannah's other parts. Like this giant turbine manufactured by the De Laval Steam Turbine Company. The precision of a jeweler is required in the making and testing of her massive gears. The design and manufacture of every item is checked and tested. No flaw must escape detection. But for a great ship, machinery must be matched by men. Men the likes of whom have always made up America's great merchant crews. The Savannah's crew was drawn from among the finest, including graduates of the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, New York. The ship's operator has assigned highly experienced officers and engineers to the NS Savannah. All her engineers and senior deck officers have been required to take extensive training in new fields in order to operate a nuclear ship. Included in the early classes were engineers of several foreign nations who were welcome to share our knowledge of the peaceful atom. Early training took place at Lynchburg, Virginia. Later, the academic work was given at the Merchant Marine Academy and at other reactor and industrial sites across the country. During a 15-month course, the men studied such subjects as nuclear physics, reactor theory and instrumentation, chemistry, thermodynamics, and health physics. To apply their theoretical training, students used an exact duplicate of the Savannah's control room. Realistic reactor operations were performed and evaluated with the aid of this reactor simulator. At the shipyard, a full-size mock-up of the entire reactor was constructed to facilitate machinery installation on the ship and to help train the Savannah's crew in maintenance procedures. There was no doubt that the crew of the NS Savannah would be among the most thoroughly trained ever assembled for a single ship. The construction of that ship was nearing completion. Engineers and scientists of foreign countries were invited to see her construction and to study her many innovations. Among the ship's features were retractable stabilizers, which were designed to counter any roll in a heavy sea. One of the many great days for the Savannah had arrived, the day of her launching. In name, she was now the nuclear ship Savannah. She would soon be that, in fact. With the containment vessel now ready to receive the reactor, a test assembly begins. Various reactor components are carefully lowered, eased into place. This assembly is made under conditions known as be clean, to keep all units free from foreign matter. An inspector checks to assure precise fitting of parts. To assemble and disassemble the reactor, special handling tools have been designed. These tools will also be used in the future maintenance and refueling of the reactor. The fuel container, often referred to as the egg crate, is set in its place. These large nozzles will direct the flow of primary water through the reactor and also help to secure the fuel elements. Other components are added to this strange upright boiler. Now the unit is ready to receive the control rods. During reactor operations, the level of insertion and withdrawal of these rods within the core will determine the reactor's output and the ship's power. Some of the last components are added. With the test assembly completed, a covering is placed over the unit to keep it clean. But before final assembly takes place, an inspection is made inside the containment vessel. With a Savannah engineer, an officer of the Coast Guard checks out those units, which will convert the reactor's power to ship's power. The containment area is monitored before fueling to obtain a reading on its natural radiation level. Every item is checked. After fueling, this area will be closed. Now, under the rigid sanitary conditions called A-clean, the final assembly and fueling takes place. To keep all equipment free of contamination, every worker is required to wear a nylon suit, boots, and head cover. The fueling scene resembles that of a surgical theater. Through openings in a special designed rotating platform, a manipulator head, the fuel elements are set into their proper positions, one at a time. Precise instruction must be followed, and each act carefully recorded during this operation. The fueling continues until all elements are fitted into the core. Constant monitoring is conducted, but no radiation is present. There will be none until a neutron source is inserted and the reactor head installed. With fueling completed, the head is now lowered into place. Then carefully fitted. And a seal weld applied. The reactor is ready for startup. From the control room, the operator begins withdrawal of the control rods until criticality, a nuclear chain reaction, is achieved. The reactor is tested up to 10% of its maximum power, but its use for ship's power is yet to come. The dockside test successfully completed, America's first nuclear merchant ship is off to Yorktown, Virginia for a series of important sea trials. The sea trial, a crucial moment in every ship's life, but more so in the Savannah's. She must undergo many tests, meet the most demanding requirements of the Maritime Administration and the Atomic Energy Commission. On board, observing and analyzing her every action and reaction, are representatives of the AEC and Maritime Administration, the Coast Guard, and the ship's builders and operators. Following a rigid schedule, a series of tests are run day and night. Every ship's maneuver is tried, every response recorded. And each day, a higher energy is summoned from the reactor. More power to the propeller shaft. Finally, the order is given. Raise power to 100%. 22,000 shaft horsepower. Conduct full power run. April 14th, 1962. The Savannah, traveling under the full power of her atomic reactor, achieves a speed in excess of 22 knots. And she performs perfectly. All hands agree. She would soon be ready for her first passengers and her first port of call. That time arrived. The port was to be the home of her famous predecessor, Savannah, Georgia. Now, with her first passengers aboard, attention was focused on her modern, attractive accommodations. It was evident that those who traveled on the first nuclear passenger ship would not only travel safely and swiftly, but in convenience and comfort. The cabins are bright, spacious, and well-equipped. A luxurious lounge features color television, a library, and unusual decor, such as tables cut from solid slabs of petrified wood. The lounge also offers a fine display of works by some contemporary American artists. A golden model of the original Savannah is displayed at the entrance to the dining room. Here, passengers are served fine food in an elegant setting. On one of the open decks, the fresh sea air and sun may be enjoyed, free from soot and exhaust. The enclosed veranda contains a variety of entertainment facilities and a full view of the outdoor swimming pool. At night, it becomes a center of some of the ship's social life. Passengers are permitted to tour the bridge and learn something of the ship's navigation. Here they can see the controls for the ship's steering and stabilizers, and perhaps receive an explanation of the latest type of radar equipment carried by the Savannah. From a visitor's gallery, passengers may observe the ship's turbine and gears, and the engineers at work in the control room. As the ship nears its destination, the captain and his staff talk of the historic entry of the vessel into its first port. Savannah, and a colorful, exciting welcome. The city turns out to greet the new ship. The auspicious occasion is marked by the words of many distinguished speakers, including Atomic Energy Commissioner Robert E. Wilson. The Secretary of Commerce, Luther H. Hodges, expresses these significant thoughts. The nuclear ship Savannah is only the beginning. Other ships will follow, faster, bigger, more efficient than this. But today we are viewing the ship that will point the way. We see here today the potential on which a more efficient merchant marine can be founded. The celebration over, her job begins. The Savannah will start the tour of duty which will take her eventually to many of the world's great ports. With her advanced type loading gear, she discharges her first cargo. Then she is underway. She makes her first trip through the Panama Canal. On this trip, she carries many special passengers. Through the locks, she now heads for the Pacific. Visiting the Seattle World's Fair, the NS Savannah sails prophetically within sight of the Space Needle, a symbol of the future, a future in which she will play an important role. Then the Savannah visits San Francisco, Long Beach, and Los Angeles, moves across the Pacific to Honolulu, and returns to the West Coast to Portland, San Diego, and Balboa. At the Nuclear Ship Service Facility at Galveston, for a planned reconditioning before further port visits, the Savannah encounters an unexpected delay, a labor problem which keeps her idle for months. With the problem solved, the Savannah is finally ready for her long-awaited voyage to additional domestic ports and various foreign ports. Maritime Administrator Nicholas Johnson and officers of the Savannah's operating company, American Export is Branston Lines, talk over plans for the ship's entry into the new ports. And as she leaves for new shores, the President of the United States, Lyndon B. Johnson, has this message about the importance of the Savannah's mission. The nuclear ship Savannah is more than a demonstration of American technology and engineering skill. She is also an expression of our belief that through the expansion of world trade and the exchange of ideas and materials, a better world can be created for the benefit of all mankind. She is a prophet of a brighter future, a symbol of hope for tomorrow. President Johnson's message ends with these words. As her brave and tiny namesake was almost 150 years ago, the Savannah is a true pioneer, carrying swiftly across the 7 seas, proof that the mighty power which propels her, the atom, can help all men to enter a new era of peace, prosperity, and progress.